Awesome, guys. Awesome to have you here. So yeah, so as we said in the invite, we're sort of going to run through four key areas about building an engineering talent brand. So the importance of why a strong brand, sorry, not band, in the community is important. How you can do it even if you're a very small team and you've got like little or no budget in terms of money and time. And then what we believe are like the fundamentals of a strong brand in the engineering community and how you stand out. And then, key topic, how to do it diversely and how especially does this through the power of community. So we'll really dig into that today. So yeah, no, we're very excited to host a session. We really want to make it interactive. So like I said, I've got a whole heap of questions. So we're going to run it like a Q&A, but just interrupt, either wave at me or unmute your mic or type it in the chat, and yeah, we're calling you to ask your question. But yeah, no, we're excited to have Pawel with us. So he's the founder of TechTree. So Pawel, why don't you start by giving yourself a little intro and tell us, about you and your background and your experience in building tech teams to date.
Sure. So nice to meet you, everyone. My background, I always start by saying that I was incredibly lucky to be born in good times in Poland and in an amazing family. So both of my parents were fairly entrepreneurial, and I also feel like I had the best MBA around family table. And when I was 22, I started a strategic communications firm, and my initial focus was on investor relations, but guess what? 6 months later, Lehman Brothers happened, and we had to very quickly sort of look at other areas. And we were lucky that one of these areas was employer branding, and we worked with likes of Google, Amazon, Intel, and especially sort of, Google was fairly inspirational to what we're doing right now. So that was like 10, 11 years ago. And what we were doing with Google was essentially encouraging their engineers and helping them to speak in various tech communities. So on various meetups, events, etc. The way it worked is sort of, they plugged their engineers into new talent pools of engineers. And then they sort of invited the most, interesting people, the people they've met, to other events that they were hosting on their office and exposed them to even more engineers from their team. And then they sort of, recommended the most interesting people they've met to work at Google. And at that time, they had like 90% of people that were recommended by their engineers. So but I grew this business to around 70 people, sold it to Publicis Group 8 years ago. And then I moved to London 5 years ago after my earnout was over, and it was fairly closed. I was advising various tech companies. I also failed in setting up my own fund because the idea I had was to invest in people in Central Eastern Europe and move them to London, part of them. And then Brexit happened. And now, about October, we've launched TechTree with the idea to to help companies recruit tech talent by tapping into existing sort of ecosystem, which is very robust and very diverse. And its essence are various communities. So if you look around various areas, you have on one hand very specialized meetups like I know, focus on machine learning in alternative finance data sets, or for example, robotics. And you have, meetups that are like around drone racing. And on the other hand, you have LGBTQ, female engineering communities, BAME communities, etc. So we think that, the thing that we started from is basically, on one hand, helping our clients to distribute the job posts via these communities. But the second thing that we're helping them to do is also co-create content with these communities and to make it efficient, because obviously, content is expensive and early stage companies are super focused. But I think, we found a way to make it fairly easy. So instead of spending a lot of time and money on producing cool looking content, we put an emphasis on authenticity and then sort of use tech to and our business model to amplify it. So the way we're helping companies to do content is essentially that they are being interviewed by a relevant community, or they organize like an online event where they do kind of like a show and tell. They present what technology they're building, technical challenges they're sharing, and then that event in itself, or that content, is then amplified by the rest of our community. And this way, we share something authentic about the business. We're able to show the biggest asset that you have as a business, which is people. So in super early stage companies, these are usually founders. In slightly more advanced companies, your employees, your engineers are the best ambassadors. If they build cool things, if they're proud of working with the company, if they want to share it, that's the way to build a brand. And sort of like going forward as a business, as we develop our tech, we want to enable more and more people interactions. So like we think that the best way to find great people, and one of the biggest problem now, is that there's very little this interaction between engineers on the company side and engineers on the outside that you want to bring. And the whole process, because of that, is very transactional. A lot of engineers in this market, especially before COVID, was picking jobs based on base salary, but the salary that was being offered. And that made them, in a way, very mercenary-like. So they were looking around after 9 months if the market rate for them isn't higher, and they were very often leaving for just companies who are paying more. And because that sort of became the norm, and average time of tenure for an engineer in a tech company is like 13 months in US and 14 months in Europe, it was very difficult to build this sort of stable teams and culture, etc. And it was very, very difficult to break this kind of vicious circle. So that's how we think about the transformation we want to offer as a tech company. And our mantra is that you work with people, not for companies. So that's a short intro, I guess.
Great. So I think a lot of people understand like what it means to build like a product brand or like a company brand, but can you specifically talk about, I know you just briefly mentioned it there, but what does it actually mean when you're building a talent brand as, an engineering company?
Yeah. So you can think about the engineering process fairly similar to sales. So the more you want it, the better choice you have. And if you're not wanted, and if you're not considered great, etc., then you need to pay a lot more. And I think, if you're a venture-backed business, and, everyone in this room is, Local Globe invested in you with having an idea that you might become $1 billion business one day. If you're going to look at what happens with $1 billion businesses that were created, most of them, they raise money every 18 to 24 months, and they're spending approximately kind of up to 50-60% of the money they raise on engineers. They are doubling or tripling their engineering teams every round. So your journey to the unicorn status is a journey of hiring tons of engineers. So if you're going to be attractive from very early stage, it's going to be much easier. If the more pull type of communication you have instead of push, the better. The big problem in the engineering world is that the urgency of hiring tech talent was so big that companies were focusing on the push. But if you push and you have loads of money, you very often fall the victim of people joining you because of what you pay them, not because they want to solve the problem. And as you over experience, like life in an early stage tech company is not rosy. Like, there's going to be long nights. There's going to be things are going to go wrong. Wrong decisions going to be made. The mistakes are going to be made. There's going to be an extra pressure, all of that. So, if you're joining only for money and then someone offers you better money and there's problems, and problems are always, you're gonna leave. And that's sort of, multiplicates because other team members are seeing that, etc. So it's a kind of a snowball effect. So we believe that it's really important to give people other reason than financial to join you. And if you're not sharing this kind of content, and content to me is not necessarily a blog post, content is being present at an event. One of the misconceptions I feel like when people call this employer branding is that it's like a niche area of communications discipline, that it's owned by marketing, and because it's a niche area of that discipline, that is something that people would look at when they are later stage company. If you're gonna think about employer branding as a concept and name it differently, name it reputation, it starts to be top of mind CEO responsibility or founder responsibility. And the other thing is that it's not about being, kind of a huge business and being known by all engineers. Like very often, your businesses are tapping into very niche area. And there's probably a meetup or someplace where people focused on that specific challenge are really interested in. So you were speaking with Emma about our joint friend Army, who used to be head of talent for Plumerai and now joined Zencargo. And he's done an amazing event. He joined Plumerai as like 9th employee and done like an event in Amsterdam, which got like, 30 people, and then sort of shared content from that and ended up having around 3,000 applications for like a company that raised seed round and was doing, non-binary neural network software. So sorry, binary neural network software. So it's like very, very niche area. And, they were a super small business. So I think, when you think also about what you can demonstrate, so another misconception of employer branding is connected with, what big companies like whatever banks, etc. are doing. So they're hiring an advertising agency and they're doing their colorful videos and they have super fancy offices to demonstrate, etc., etc. But again, if that is the kind of thing that is appealing for potential employees, that's probably a wrong thinking if they're joining, a seed or Series A stage business. So I think, instead, what you can focus on is demonstrate, how cool people are working in your business and how cool problems are you trying to solve. And that is the right draw. So people who are drawn to that have certainly the right sort of mental attitude.
Before we jump into like the actual, practicalities of what are the best resources and things to do in order to grow a talent brand, you talked about Mercenaries just now, but I've heard you talk about it before versus like the fanatics. Can you talk through like exactly what you mean by that and, and how that relates to your business and your talent brand, etc.?
Yeah, so I think, we all know history, etc., and, the wars, etc., and many people compare, building a startup to a war. So, one of the concepts is that you don't need to win all the battles. The end result matters. The second thing is that, mercenaries can be great to solve a particular problem, but you really what you need is a group of fanatics, because mercenaries are there, they're being paid, and the moment someone pays better, they're just leaving. And they're driven by not just money, they're sometimes driven by interesting problem, but again, they join, they do the work, they leave, or they don't like it, they leave. They're not attached to what you're trying to build, they're not bought into vision, etc. I do believe that generally engineering in Europe is fairly mercenary driven. One of the reasons for that is that there's not too many engineers who, being early hires of tech companies, made significant money from exits. So, you have the Skype mafia, but you really don't have that many businesses, say in London, that made it to $1 billion status, exited, and made a lot of engineers rich. So I think, not a lot of engineers pay a lot of attention to equity as a long-term incentive. I think it's different in US slightly. So generally, when you think about fanatic is like kind of a cult member. Like they're joining you because they really like what you're trying to solve. They're joining you because they believe in what you're saying, and they make it part of identity that they are part of this business. And like failure would be sort of something connected with them, right? It's part of their life. It's not just a job. It's not contracting. I'm building this thing. This is my whatever brainchild. Like I was the first engineer. I joined them before they joined Y Combinator or whatever. Like this is the kind of thing, the kind of a thinking, kind of expression that someone who's like a fanatic is in the workplace. And I really, really think that, in this early stage company, if you're gonna, first through founders mentality and sort of like focus on that, hiring the right kind of people, and then these right kind of people also feeling that it's their mission to attract super talented people, you get a shot of building a cult, building fanatics. And this sort of, as you watch movies or whatever, this recruitment to all the kind of, cults or, uh, you know, groups who believe in Satan or whatever, this recruitment is like really the essential part. Like, that's the entire focus. And like, everyone who in a way joins a cult need to bring other cult members. And I think it's so important for, tech companies. And that's why, in early stage companies, the best hires are almost always made on the basis of, this sort of pre-existing network, because people bring people that they work with, that that they know their personality, they know their motivation, they speak with them honestly. And if you have this core of people, you can continue to grow. The moment your culture starts flipping to mercenary, that culture is becoming sort of endangered. There are a lot of reasons why that happens. One of the reasons I've encountered in a lot of businesses is also start to offer, they need to hire, say, 100 engineers. They start to offer much higher salaries, and they don't increase the salaries of early team. And they're saying, well, you guys got significantly more equity. But I don't think this is the right kind of reasoning. So, to me, they got this equity because they risked joining this business at a very early stage where a lot of things were uncertain. And I saw a lot of companies losing this kind of, this cult because it was just wrong. And yeah, I think, at this early stage, you have this unique opportunity to be focused on people. And I also do believe that a lot of great engineers, one thing they really like is showcasing their work, that because they're usually proud of their work. You're all doing quite innovative things, etc. So in a way, it's sort of like a win-win, because for your employee, you're giving them an opportunity to build their brand and to share what they've done, etc. And the way it works for the outside audience is, yeah, this is a cool company. Not only they're doing cool things, this engineer is cool, and they're also letting him talk about it. That's cool. In my business, they're not letting me to talk about the stuff I'm doing. And I think this is also like a very, very big shift that happened. So a lot of inspiration to my business I took from areas that might feel remote. One of them is dating, and the other one is influencer marketing. And to me, like when I was meeting clients like 12 years ago and advising them on their corporate reputation, we were saying, you need to pick one or two people from your organization, and we're gonna invest in building their personal brand. So it was, usually the CEO and someone, because getting attention was very expensive. There was a few media titles, you had to deal with journalists, or you had to pay for being on conferences. And that was it. Right now, distribution is cheap. Like usually the group of engineers that you're tapping into, the ideal the talent group, are all the people that your engineers know already. So like most of the time, you can make all of the required hires from the network of your engineers or their network. So, places like social networks are a fairly easy way and cheap way of distributing that. Like there's no limited, audience, etc. And then there's a lot of places, these communities, where you can in a way plug your engineers in. And again, the value is there, right? So I think, this sort of, if you think about building a cult, you need to build a brand. It has to be something that has a draw and is interesting. And also like, its members have to recruit. They have to go out there. They have to proudly speak about being part of this cult. So that's how I think about this sort of, mercenaries, fanatics shift.
Yeah, I'm just going to throw in another question on that. And I can see Ed's on the call, and I think one of the most heated discussions I've had this month was with him and Orbital Witness team about their first tech hire, because they had a high. Oh, there he is. Hey, Ed. Don't feel the need chair if you don't want to. But we had a big sort of chat on, your first fanatic versus a mercenary that might be on a higher salary. I'm sure others on the team have had similar experience. Ed, where did you get to on how you were thinking about your first tech hire and that profile? Sorry, I did say I was going to make this interactive.
That's really interesting, Pawel. I've really enjoyed this so far because there's a lot of the things that you said have just been like kind of echoing in my head. I had a kind of a quite specific question off the back of this already. Where we got to is we're about to make an offer to a candidate, and one of the things you talked about was like how they view equity at this stage. So for context, guys, we just raised our seed round, and this is we've had an interim CTO, and this is a long-term replacement that we're looking at. And though of course we made equity part of the package, in this particular instance, like I think there was just a bit more negotiation on base than we would necessarily have hoped, but it kind of feels like it makes sense for like at this stage your like use of equity is kind of just like it feels almost a bit token at this seed stage. It feels like later down the line when there's more of a visible exit that becomes a more meaningful discussion. So we were quite surprised that like, well, not surprised, we thought perhaps because we're the founders that this would be the thing that would be the negotiating point, and we were kind of quickly disabused of that. So it was quite interesting to hear what you said, and also the stakes are being upped at each stage. I'm also noticing this with the engineering hires that we're bringing on people at higher salaries. We're getting references from people in our team, like bringing out in their former colleagues, but the salaries are going up, which means that if we're not careful, there will be a discrepancy between the early hires and the later hires. So I thought that was like a pressure point that maybe like could have easily been a black spot for us. So yeah, there's loads of stuff here that I'm like, oh, yeah. Thanks.
Yeah. So we obviously know. So we're working with Will and Fergus on some of your roles as TechTree. So we know a bit about your situation. But yeah, I think it's. I think the challenge is that. Well, you now kind of experience why it's so important to have like a technical founder, right? Because ideally you have a technical founder who sort of grows into a role of like a CTO, and then sort of you're looking for a VP engineering that it's slightly easier to have that person as a kind of mercenary if you have the person who knows everything as technology. So I think that's one thing. The other thing is simply again like the CTO candidate that don't know too many friends who made a lot of money from equity. And that's a big problem to find people with right kind of motivation, right? It's I think I was speaking to a head of talent who has been working for 2-3 companies in Silicon Valley. He's originally from there. He's American, and you know, he worked with companies that went from, you know, about 10-20 people to 150 people. And then he moved to Europe because his wife is from the UK, and he worked in companies who did that in Europe. And his reflection on that was that people in US kind of understand better on what they are signing up for. Like when they join this early stage company, you know, yeah, they may get, you know, 0.5% of equity as a single engineer, or, you know, even 1% when they're joining at like angel round. And it's going to be super hard, and their salary on the beginning is going to be lower, but, you know, there is a chance for an upside, and they know that. And he said that his feeling in Europe was that people they have a hard time accepting lower salary than they could in a business without any equity. And they want equity, but they're sort of, but I think, you know, it's like the equity feels like a token to them, and they don't connect monetary value with that. And I think, you know, it's really important to sort of, you know, structure it in a way maybe that you also let people then make conscious decision on purchasing the equity. So you don't give it. So you give them salary. There is an equity pool, like on options, but they have to purchase them, which is also a popular mechanism in, you know, US. We've recently helped a guy who was like a first engineer in a YC and then index pack business find a new job after 5 years. And it was really interesting because, you know, he bought some of the options, and now he has to decide whether he's exercising more. And, you know, he's really thinking about the business, etc. So that's another way of, I think, you know, making people reflect. So kind of enabling them this optionality. Because otherwise, you know, if you're just going to give it to them, they're not going to feel it in a way. And, you know, if for example, after year one, it's going well and they spend, you know, £10,000 to exercise the option from their salary, that's going to be a completely different a perspective in terms of understanding the value of that. The second point is that one of the things that people have to realize is that salaries in London are essentially half of salaries in New York and San Francisco. So like there's a you know, San Francisco and New York are above 150K base salary. London is average 72,000 US dollars. You know, Warsaw would be about 40, 45 now. So kind of there's way bigger difference between US and London. And I really think that London's gonna, a lot of you would say that London is fairly competitive market for hiring engineers. It's gonna be, in my view, then in the next 2 years, it's gonna become even more competitive because US companies will start to hire European engineers like crazy. And they're gonna offer 25% lower salaries than in New York, and they're still gonna get, you know, great people. Like being a reasonably senior engineer and earning, say, £80,000 or £70,000 salary does not give you great quality of life in London. So it's also, I think, you know, again, in a lot of situations, founders are not raising enough money to hire the really best engineers, etc. So that's another part of the equation that, you know, like no one wants to both like work super hard and then also struggle to, you know, give great life for his family, his or her family.
Do you mind if I ask one quick question? Just not to make the discussion too much around equity, but one thing that we've been considering recently, we have some contracted developers as well. I'm sure most people on the call also have a bit of a mix. And some of them have been with us for ages and they're fantastic. And we, just because they're, you know, the way that you described, kind of, we almost, you know, de facto routinely offer equity as part of a salary package, as part of a compensation package for an employee, but never for a contractor. And we've kind of been rethinking that recently and wondering whether, in recognition of year, 2 years of like great service as a contractor, people who we consider to be every bit as part of the team as employees, we should consider options packages.
I would totally do that. Like, to me, I know several people in London, and it's a huge population, but it's people who are, for example, Turkish, for whom it's difficult to get to become employed from visa reasons. So, if they're working for you as, contracting structure, it doesn't mean that they think like contractors. One of my first lead engineer, I hired him as a contractor, and then year and a half later, decided to give him equity, and with on same vesting criteria that all the other team members have, and even said that the vesting date is actually when he started contracting with us. And I think, it's just a recognition of, someone's commitment, because he was always, he was always behaving like he's part of the team, like almost like a founder, looking for, simple solutions, challenging what we're doing, etc., etc. So, why would he treat him differently because it's a different legal structure? Like, essentially, you want, you want him basically to feel the part of the cult. You don't want him to feel like mercenary if he's not acting like one. There's a question around IR35.
Yeah, I don't know the legals around that. Do you?
What I know is that generally it would actually bring this sort of clarity. From what I understand, I'm not a legal expert. What I understand is going to happen is that if people are working sort of for one company and from the office, etc., they will be taxed as employees, more or less. I think that's the short of that. So I imagine that, this contracting market is going to significantly change. I think that if you're hiring someone who's genuinely, like working from another country, etc., and you're hiring him as a contractor and you're giving him equity, that's still possible. I know some companies are doing that.
Yeah.
We're doing that. So yeah, so I think, it's I would not look at legal structure of the relationship. I would look at people's attitude, etc. And you salary and equity, are ways to motivate people to the behavior you want. And I think it's also great for culture if you're gonna show that you're rewarding these people for their attitude and hard work, etc.
Yeah. I would love now to get into like the proper nitty gritty, because I think one thing that would be amazing from this call is if everyone, took one thing away that they could just like run with over summer to like massively improve their talent brand. I mean, it could be 2 or 3, but I always think do one thing incredibly well. And if you get a second or third, then that's a bonus. But given there are like so many different ways you can build a talent brand, especially at the early stage when you haven't yet tackled any of them and you've got limited budget and limited time, what are some of the key things that teams can be doing at the early stage to have maximum impact in order to grow a talent brand?
Yeah, so one of the things engineers say they really miss when looking at companies is what they are actually going to be working on. So if you look at a typical job description for an engineer, it's focused on requirements. It says something about what the company does and what they expect from candidate. But if you look at it through the candidate lens, there's one big hairy question, which is, what am I actually going to build? Like if you're a front-end engineer joining 20, 30 people team, am I going to be building a mobile app or the admin panel front-end? Like that's a significant difference. So one of the things I would, consider doing, and for example, Y Combinator has done that recently, is just to do like almost like a 30 seconds to 1 minute video next to every job that says what the job is about by a hiring engineer. Like literally record yourself on a mobile phone or on a computer and just say about what are we going to build, what is the ideal profile, like like, you know, like you would say to someone. That's a really simple thing. So it gives so much more information than the job description itself. Like if you think about, you know, how engineers look at job, they really looking for what am I going to build, right? What is the challenge? The second thing, like when you have a founding announcement, like why not do, whether it's a video or a blog post or even like a Q&A with someone. So, you know, usually, you know, if you're a founder or CEO, you go to speak to TechCrunch on someone else. Why not have, you know, technical person do the same and say, so, you know, we've just raised a round and it means, and, you know, before that we've built that. And now in the next 2 years, we want to do that. And the challenges we're going to have are that, that, and that. And by the way, guess what? We're hiring. Right? So you have the technical leader, you can see the way that technical leader, whether this is a co-founder or a CTO, like, you know, how he thinks about the challenges, how he thinks about what are the things that were done. And, you know, that kind of person would also know the things that are cool for engineers, right? So, you know, they would know that, say, that when you're looking for data scientists, etc., they're typically interested in the amount of data you have. And from where do you have it from? So you can include that kind of information. So you can say, for example, one of our clients is, you know, Peanut, and it's a, you know, social network for women who plan to have kids, and they were looking for a senior backend person. You might say this would be not very attractive role for men, but if you read into that, there's actually one of very few social networks with millions of users, shitloads of user-generated content, and they're just implementing data science functions. So they're going to be trying to use this data to enrich the experience, etc. That's pretty cool for a, you know, senior backend role for someone who has an interest in data. There's not a lot of businesses in Europe that will be doing that kind of thing with that amount of, you know, really, really interesting data. And you're going to be helping someone. You're not going to be sending, you know, a tool that's going to optimize the way invoices are issued. You're going to be helping people in one of the most experiences in their life, which is motherhood, and then sort of like, you know, the kind of a work, like having some kind of, you know, balancing between your life as a parent and your life professionally. So I think it's pretty cool. So you know, so there's a lot of cool things in every of the businesses that, you know, you're working on. And you know, like, you know, a lot of people may think that, you know, the property and due diligence in property is like, you know, super niche, etc. But if you're going to talk about, you know, the obstacles, the challenges, the legacy stuff, and what we can make it to be, that's quite cool, right? So I think, you know, there's a lot of formats. The other thing is just all the meetups, I can tell you that, are just waiting to hear from you. Like when we talk with meetups, they tell to us, like, one of our biggest problem is getting speakers. And, you know, it's challenging for them because sometimes they're very niche. So they're like, you know, 100 people, 50 people on the meetup. And, you know, for a lot of companies, they don't think that it makes sense. But again, like if you've raised seed, you know, you've probably looking for whatever, let's say 5 to 20 hires. So, you know, so it's all about the fit to purpose, not about, you know, a huge audience. Like, you know, we were all sort of living in this world where, you know, any kind of marketing, PR related stuff, you measure the reach, which is a very stupid thing because it doesn't accept of awareness. And maybe that's, you know, important if you're selling a consumer product. It's not really relevant for you because you're looking for, like, you know, 5 to 20 great people with a very particular skill set and ideally interests. So the sort of like, if you're gonna get to 30 on the meetup, then it may be them, but maybe they know other people like that. You know, if your tech stack is Ruby on Rails and you're going to Ruby on Rails meetup, you're almost 100% sure that you have, you know, 100% fit into that. And a lot of these people work in other organizations. And, you know, Obviously, you can use TechTree to amplify that, because we're essentially, on one hand, multiplicating this effect, because when we have our client on a meetup, that meetup is also promoted by other meetups. And then all the people, we're incentivizing people to recommend as well. So we're sharing up to 50% of our revenue with whoever recommends. So whether this is someone who came to meetup or another meetup, etc., we would be sharing this money with them. We would enable them to donate this money to charity, etc., etc. So we generally want to amplify sort of, the natural ways of building kind of a cult, recruiting amazing people who really want to join you.
Wow, it's now a good time to talk about like how you get, I don't know if you guys know, but TechTree do these events where they bring together all like the community groups that he spoke about at the start, whether it's women in tech or BAME, etc. And so there's like a big audience of engineering talent, and then they have like a few companies get up and talk about their company and their tech in order to showcase it and sell it to the audience at there. Do you have any sort of key examples of what works really well in those sessions, i.e. what should people be talking about to really wow the audience when you've got one?
I think it's fairly simple. Like, don't talk about the fact that you're recruiting. Talk about something particular that you've built, that you're proud of, your engineer is proud of. And the idea is that the audience will, after the event, would have a feeling that they learned something really interesting. Like, one of the things that we're talking about is that very often the companies that produce a lot of content are companies like Google, Uber, etc., like huge businesses. They publish a lot of technical content. They have great engineering blogs. But very often an early stage business is not in position to actually, sort of apply that. So what is interesting for engineers in your companies, and engineers who are working in similar companies like yours are usually the right fit for you to hire, right? So typically, when you hire someone who was at Google, Facebook, etc., they're going to show up the first day and they're going to say, hey, sorry, but when I was working at Google, I had my own DevOps person, QA person, etc. They can't really build anything themselves anymore. So like, you're looking to hire from similar companies. So, so you want to show something practical. So for example, one of our clients is Hopin. We've done an event with them. They hired like 4 people through us in less than 4 weeks. And, they basically spoken about, what are the challenges that we have to deal with growing our monthly users from like 16,000 in March to 175,000 in May. Hopin is the, online event with marketing, with networking platform. So it's quite sort of, bandwidth heavy. So dealing with that scaling is not like super, super easy. And, that's something that was, interesting to listen to. So that would be my tip. Like, focus on something you've built and demonstrate that. And what the audience will see is something useful, and an engineer who shows by the way he speaks or she speaks, and the way they talk about something, that they're proud of the things they're doing and that they consider it cool.
And just like when you say speak about it, I know we spoke about this briefly before others joined the call. Like, when people are building a talent brand similar to how they would build like a marketing function for their product, like, how often should people be sharing publicly, like posting about a job or posting about the work they're doing, etc.? Like, what's the cadence for getting this stuff out on social or LinkedIn, etc.? And is there a difference of where people should be posting for any given type of engineering or any given geography, etc.? Is there a cultural difference? So I know we've got some people here in Germany as well on the call. Are there different things that work better in different geographies?
I wouldn't say so. And again, you're not gonna do everything perfectly from day one. You're not gonna have army people, so don't overcomplicate. Like, share things that are relevant, don't spam people. But also, like, if you build great content about something, 3 months ago, post it once in a while somewhere. Like someone has read it, someone else has not read it, and that's great. Like one of your portfolio companies, Kuva, have done a pretty cool, they were posting on Twitter some time ago after like kind of a hackathon type of 2 days. So, that was super cool. There was a lot of content about a lot of interesting things. And I think, everyone can do that as well. So I don't think, there's rule, and, I wouldn't, it has to be relevant, it has to feel authentic. So, these are the basic guidelines. I feel that, it's also, don't spend like, days preparing it. Like, it's supposed to be, it can be interactive. So, one of natural ways is that, you're going to a meetup, someone, usually an engineer running the meetup, is interviewing someone from your team. And, this is videoed. So you have the video recording of that. And you can distribute that afterwards, put it on your website. So, you've spent maybe, an hour preparing and an hour delivering that. And there's a, kind of a ton of content built and great reach. I think it's also like when you're thinking about diverse recruitment in particular, I feel that it has like a terrific effect on the audience. Where, for example, your CTO, who's statistically man, is interviewed, for example, by a female engineer. I think it makes a massive difference in sort of kind of projecting this sort of openness or organization, etc. There's those kinds of tools you can use to encourage people to ask questions earlier, ask them anonymously as well. I think part of the function of engaging with these diversity-focused communities is just sort of encouraging people to apply and like letting them believe. Like almost every conversation I have with female engineer, there is a sentence in there that says, well, it's really interesting for me because of ABC, but I'm afraid I wouldn't meet that and that criteria. I also think that it's important that you apply it. Like I see a lot of like when you process the funnel, it's not our job. We can't impact it yet through our technology. It's gonna change in the future, but it's more distant future. It's like female engineers, female applicants would very often, in a way, self-identify their weaknesses and be open about them. And it's gonna make it easy to reject them from the process. And then at step 3, you're gonna find out that the super confident male applicant also has these deficiencies, but he was doing everything to not show them. And you kind of, okay. So I think it's also, trying to be conscious of that when also processing the candidate funnel as well. And also like, saying things like, don't worry if you don't meet all the criteria, etc. Like saying it explicitly like matters. So, I said that, one should not talk, like the talk should not be based on career and recruitment, etc. But I think, especially with various diversity focused communities, like just, encouraging people to apply, etc., reach out directly, it's massively important. And again, you're getting this chance of identifying candidates that are really into that really want to do it, that it's something really interesting for them. And then maybe it's sort of, that's you should apply maybe slightly different criteria, but because maybe, in half a year, they're gonna be great because they're gonna get some new skills, etc. But their attitude, something they have done in the past, will make them very, very differentiated and very valuable people. So like a lot in engineering is very focused on skills, and obviously skills are important, but I would also put a strong emphasis on sort of identifying people's individual motivations and like leading the process in a way that you can make an action, like identify it and then sort of make conscious actions on that.
guys, we've got just over 5 minutes left. I do have more questions, but I want to make sure if anyone else has them that you guys have time to ask. So just wave at me if you've got anything else that you want asked. If not, I'll just keep going. Oh, go on, Ed.
Just two actually, and they're boring. They just kind of have examples. One is examples of really good employer brands from a tech side, just that I can go and have a look, particularly at an early stage. And two is just reflecting back the last discussion, examples of more of the community-focused events. You mentioned women in tech, but there must be others. Like our issue when we hire technical roles is just that we don't get the candidates even we use in recruiters. We don't get a broad range of candidates. So if you've got other events that we could and should go to, I'm interested in hearing. Thanks.
Yeah. So, first question. I think not a lot of early stage businesses are doing employer branding. I really like what Kuva does from early stage companies. I think they're doing it very consciously. I have a bit of inside track because the wife of my co-founder is the lead UI designer, so I know slightly more. But also I like the thing they planned to have their own meetup, I assume, because I got a notification from meetup.com that Kuva set up their own meetup. They've done this kind of a hackathon where they shared a lot of stuff on Twitter. I feel it looked very authentic, etc. So that's a good example for me with very limited resources, very little extra effort of doing something that that people like. So that's for early stage companies. I think it's nice blueprint. And
can you mention the company? Did you say Uber?
Kuva.
Did you say that's an Uber?
CUVVA, Cover.
Another local portfolio company.
Yeah, it's another one. Something else they're good at doing as well is they're good at getting their tech team to like tweet when they've like released an awesome update and things like that. So I remember seeing one tweet being like, oh my God, just did XYZ and pushed it out to so many million customers, those like little hacks.
It's just this notion that you let people communicate what they built and they're proud of, etc. And as far as community events are concerned, like first of all, according to Tech Nation, there's like 57,000 meetups all over the world in engineering. Well, that's quite a lot. And obviously there's a ton of meetups on meetup.com, etc. So their reach is like, I don't know, millions, like 20 millions of people, etc. We're gonna be releasing like post-summer, we're gonna be doing an event with you. So basically the idea of the event that your companies can present different, like we're calling it show and tell. So you're presenting something that you're proud of, and then that is distributed by a lot of communities in our network, a lot of whom are communities like whatever, Muslim makers, LGBTQ focused communities, Intertech, etc. So we're trying to get a lot of that. We're also definitely at the end of September, there's I think it's called Diversity and Inclusion Week. So we're definitely going to be doing one. But generally, we're also going to be releasing like a schedule of like subject-focused events, and all of these events, by design, are going to be distributed by all these communities. And we're basically signing up about 20, 30 communities every month. So that's going to be having bigger and bigger reach. And some of these communities are in London. Some of these communities are in other places in Europe. Some of them have multiple chapters. So we definitely want to make it easy. Like I understand that for a small organization to browse through tens or hundreds of meetups and discuss with them sort of individually, I know that it might be hard, but that's why we're trying to make it easy.
Any other questions from folks? No? Jamal, I know you're on the call. Are you actively on the call? So I did want to just call on you. Are you there?
Yeah.
Can you just talk about what you guys did in the early days with the work you did when you got your talent sponsor visa and how you reached out to sort of engineering talent, because that was quite a good talent brand hack that you guys went through.
Yeah, so we I guess in terms of background is that we basically do quite a bit of machine learning, and for machine learning we identified that like oftentimes we didn't need to immediately go for the PhDs who would be really good at like various, basically a lot of the research, but actually sort of they would have spent 3 years doing a lot of machine learning, and when they go into industry, like they sort of going with a certain mindset, and so we actually reached out directly to a lot of master's level programs who essentially had a lot of people who who were eager to just get into industry. At that point, machine learning in industry had also sort of this like gatekeeping thing where like unless you did a PhD, the people didn't think you had a lot of experience in machine learning, and so we sort of tried to tap in a lot into those talents in terms of courses in UCL, Edinburgh, and Cambridge, and actually could sort of reach out directly to people there quite quickly.
Cool, thank you. Anyone else have any hacks they want to share with the group before we round up? One I'll mention, and I don't know if everyone has one in place, but if people aren't using a ATS already, an applicant tracking system, and you have everything saved in Google Sheets, I'm a massive advocate for getting one so that all your data on your sort of employee hiring process is all stored in one place. And if you're using something like a Workable as well, they have like a careers page that you can just upload stuff to. So it just makes that whole process so efficient, especially if you don't yet have a website that's set up with like your whole employer brand on it and everything you do. You can just direct people to like your Workable careers page, and it just helps keep everything so in line. We haven't spoke about the candidate experience at all today in a hiring process, but it is the first experience that a candidate has of your business, and if they have a bad experience and they get treated sort of in an ineffective way, not only is it bad on that individual, it's also bad for your brand as a whole, because they'll also tell other engineers about the bad process they have with you guys. So just having an ATS set up so that everything is streamlined, you know exactly where you are with an applicant, you don't accidentally send an applicant rejection email after saying, oh, let's meet, which has happened many times with many companies because they didn't know that they've replied to someone. So yeah, that's my quick hack. But I am an advocate for great tools. So
yeah, and it's
me.
yeah, and it's, I think, two things connected with that. What you said is present the application sort of interview process up front, like what it is, etc., how many meetings, stuff like that, even in the written form. Like that's one of the things that's massively like off-putting for candidates, that they don't know what is the process, etc. And the second thing, like rejections of people who were in the process, like it's really worth to spend 5-10 minutes and making a call and telling them what went wrong. And I've heard so many stories about companies who've done that, and then these people actually recommended them great engineers. Like it's really, really massively valuable. And like applying for jobs, even for engineers, is super stressful. So it's really it's like a sign of a good culture and good organization that you're making the effort, even if the answer is no.
Right, thanks everyone. We'll probably wrap up there, as I think the hour just ticked over. But I'll be sharing a follow-up email anyway, and I will loop Pawel in. So if you have any more questions, or you're keen to find out more about what TechTree do, because we honestly think they do a great job and really help build like sustainable, diverse brands. And they've been doing some excellent work with portfolio companies. So we'll share a bit of light on what they do and how they do it as well. So really great. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks
so much.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Have a great day, everyone.
Yes,
Bye.
you too.